G'day DIY pool legends. Well, today we're going to be talking about backfilling a fiberglass pool in Australia. And we're not installers, so we're going to walk you through what this particular installer is doing and give you a few tips and points on the way. With installing a fiberglass pool, it's absolutely critical that you use the right backfill material as per the Australian standards for fiberglass pool installation. If you haven't seen our video on that, please go back and watch that now. It will make this video have a lot more context and sense as you're going. Now, one of the main things, most important things when you're backfilling a pool is when you fill the pool up and the deep end has 300 millimeters of depth. That's about the level of water that you need to be able to set the level of the pool at its final resting point. A lot of this video is going to be talking about how do you get the level of the pool right once the weight of the water starts to push down the corners, and that perfect level that you had when the pool first landed is now a little bit out because your bedding material isn't compacted and the weight of the water is going to push the pool down. So one of the key bits of gear you're going to need is a laser leveler, and you can hire those from a Coates Hire or any other equipment hire place, about $150 for the day. It's going to save you more than $150 worth of Panadol if you have a serious headache at the end of the day when the pool's now full with water and you realise that one of the corners is out by 20 or 30 mil. Maybe something a little bit stronger than Panadol might be needed. But you can see here that the installer's now walking around just checking the corners, checking the middle lengths of the pool as well. And as that sits at the moment, all the levels are within about 5 millimeters of where it needs to be. That will change once the pool starts to fill up with water and the weight of the water starts to push down on the pool. So the key thing is keep checking the levels constantly throughout the process. It's better to check a little bit more often than what you really need than to check a little bit less than what you really need as well. So the installer has built up a row of backfill material around the pool already. Now, one of the important parts here is the Australian standards talks about filling the pool with water first and then up to a depth of about 300 mil, and then you backfill to the depth of that water. This installer's put a lot of pools in all different soil types. Little tip from his side is just before you start putting water into the pool, push about 150 mil of backfill down and around the pool. That way, if the walls start to fall in on your excavation, then the most important part in terms of getting your levels right, meaning having the right backfill material right on the bottom part of the pool, underneath the pool slightly and right around the curves, is going to be cement stabilized backfill, which is exactly what you want. You don't want to have a whole heap of sand or mud or rocks or anything along those lines, which over time is going to shift. So before the water goes in, get a little bit of backfill material around the pool, and then when you start washing that backfill in, the first part, or the only material that's going to be around the pool, is backfill, even if the walls start to cave in after that, which definitely can happen if you're in a sandy site or some other sites where the materials do move around a little bit more. So what the installer's doing here, fortunately with this installation, there is a fire hydrant access point out in the street, so the installer is taking advantage of that. That's why the water has got a bit of a brown tinge to it and will stay brown because there's rust in the pipelines. However, you can use water carts or you can use a garden hose. Now, a garden hose is fairly slow to fill the pool. A water cart, just make sure that when you're booking them, that they've allowed to be on site for several hours so that you can fill the water to a depth of 300 mil, backfill to that, add another 300 mil of depth, backfill to that. Otherwise, the water cart is going to want to dump all of the water into the pool and then leave as quickly as possible. And that's going to make life really difficult for you because the leveling part of the pool, getting all of the corners set at the right level that you want the pool to finish at, is done in this first initial stage, in this first 300 mil of depth or depth of water in the pool. So don't cut corners by saving $50 or $100 on the water cart. Once that pool's full, it gets very difficult to then start trying to lift the pool up and level it if it's sitting a little bit low. And just on that point, if when you first measure the height of the pool, it is sitting a little bit high, there isn't anything you can do about that other than pull the pool out and reset the screed and get the levels right before you put the pool back in. Now, the other piece of equipment that is going to make your life really easy while you're at the high joint getting the laser leveler, then get a submersible pump that has a solid meter of hose at the end. It could be solid PVC pipe. And the reason for that then is the pump, as you can see here, there's a power cord going off to the right. It's basically sucking the water out of the pool and then pushing it down in and around the pool under pressure, and you're using it as a water rod. So can you use a garden hose to wash in the backfill around the pool? No, you can't. It's like if you've ever planted a tree in sand and you hose in and hose in and hose in and you think it's absolutely drenched, and then you scratch back the first inch and it's bone dry underneath. It can be exactly the same with using a garden hose. So having a submersible pump with a solid meter end is going to make your life a lot easier. It's going to get the water right down into the bottom and around the pool, so that way when that cement stabilized backfill material gets wet, it's going to go off, it's going to set, and that's what's going to lock your pool in and keep your levels right. You can see now that as the pool's filling with water, the first thing that the installer is doing is once again checking the levels. There's not a huge amount of water in there, but already the left-hand corner, the one closest to the screen, has dropped by about 5 or 6 mil. Now you can see just how much water is coming out of that water rod as the installer took it out of the pool. It doesn't look like a lot, but it is under a fair bit of pressure. So what's really important to notice here is the installer is getting that water rod right down into the corner of the pool, right down near the bottom, and just how much water is going to go in and around the pool when you are backfilling. It might seem a little bit counterintuitive, but the amount of water that's needed is absolutely significant. And once again, don't use a garden hose. It's just not going to do the job. And if you get groundwater coming around the pool with the first decent bits of rain, any pockets that have been left from the backfilling process are then going to start to collapse, and then your level of your pool might start to shift. So we'll follow the installer here in real time. You can see now that he's working his way along. He's rodding in the water. He's mixing up the backfill. He's not just allowing the water just sort of float around on the top. He's actually pushing it up and down to get the water in and around and mix it in and make sure that it is washing in and around the pool. You can see here in real time the time that is taken, and this whole time the water coming out of that water rod is under a lot of pressure. There's a lot of litres of water going in and around the pool. Now, while we're waiting for the installer to make his way down to the other end, you can see to the left of the skimmer box there's that open pipe that is sitting up above the edge of the pool. That is your standpipe. There's a video that we've made about the standpipe on a fiberglass pool and why it's there. Just keep an eye on that, because we'll talk about that in a little while and how you use that when you're backfilling your pool. At the end of the day, if the amount of water that is in between the outside of the shell and your excavation, meaning out and around the shell, is higher than the level of water that's inside the pool, your pool will float. And all of that hard work that you've done, getting the pool nice and level, getting it nice and straight, is going to be out the window, and you're going to be waiting for that water level to drop that's around the pool, or throw your submersible pump down that pipe and start pumping water out. Prevention is definitely better than cure when it comes to that. It's something to keep an eye on, particularly if you're putting your pool into H1, H2 or E or highly reactive or clay excavations, because the water just won't actually drain away, and then it can get a little bit painful. So you can see as the installer's worked his way along and working from the deep end first, that's where all the weight in the pool is going, that he's now fitted what's called a recovery jack to the left-hand corner of the pool. Now, what does that recovery jack do? It's going to help the installer slowly rock the pool up and down to get some backfill underneath that corner and lift the level of the pool. Now, it's really important to note that the jack isn't like jacking up a car. You don't just jack it up 50 mil and leave the pool hanging in the air. That's not going to do the pool any good, and it's not going to make life any easier for yourself. So there's a little bit of a technique with this. There's a lot of different ways to level or raise a pool. In this instance, this is the way the installer has done it for 15 years and has had very good results. So you can see now that the pool has dropped by about 10 mil with the weight of the water that's in the pool. You can see the water's gone still, so the pumping water into the pool has been turned off because it's now 300 mil deep in the deep end. So what's the installer up to here is just gently rocking the pool. Now, the whole time that water rod is running, and you see just how long the water rod stays in that corner to make sure that enough water and enough backfill gets washed under the corner. But by using this recovery jack, the installer is doing is just rocking the pool up and down, no more than a centimetre at a time. And then that creates a sucking motion down at the base of the pool. It allows the backfill to get drawn in underneath the pool. And then when it's underneath the pool, it's going to lift it. The pool can't go down any further because it's now sitting on a slightly higher amount of backfill. We've skipped ahead about 3 or 4 minutes now, and that whole time that water rod's been there sitting, pumping water into that corner. So installer's back rocking the pool, and what installers talk about is when you get enough water underneath that corner, it starts to lift the pool. And it's what installers will say, you feel it on the jack go a little bit light, and that's what's going to allow you to lift the pool when there's thousands of kilos of water sitting in the pool as it is now. So you can see it's still very much a gentle rocking motion. And importantly, in between our little jump forward there, the installer's gone and checked the levels again to see how much the pool has lifted in that corner. You're only wanting to lift it 2 or 3 millimeters at a time, so that way you know when the pool is at the level that you want it to rest at finally. You definitely don't want to lift it past the height, because once you do that, it's very difficult to try and lower the pool. And as we touched on before, really this stage is one of the most important parts, because once you get the level of the pool right at this stage and then you've washed in backfill up to that 300 mil depth of water around the pool, you've pretty much locked in the height of the pool. And when you start adding in extra water, another 5, 10, 15,000 litres or 15,000 kilos of weight, the pool level then shouldn't shift. So by the time you finish this stage, the level where the pool is really where you want the pool to stay for the next 20 or 30 years. So you can see here just how much water is going into the corner of the pool. That's now been there for the better part of about 6 or 7 minutes. And you can see just how much of the backfill, that initial 150 mils that was pushed in around the pool, has been washed in and underneath the pool, and just how much work is going in rodding the water around the pool. Now, this is what we touched on before. So the installer is using this bit of PVC pipe. It's going to put it down the standpipe, see how much water is around the outside of the pool, and then measure that against how much water is inside the pool. Now you can see that there's more water going into the pool. The pump is back on from the street. The pool is filling again. There's a lot of water. By the time you wash the backfill in all the way around the entire pool, which is what you're going to do once you get the levels right in each corner, there's a lot of water around the pool, and you want to check this at least 3 or 4 times during your backfill. So the next part, once you've got your levels right, the pool's starting to fill, so you go from 300 mil deep water in the deep end to 600 mils, so increments of 300 mil. Then is the steps and getting enough backfill material underneath steps and swim out ledges. You don't want to feel the steps bow down because when you walk on them, because there's not enough backfill material underneath each of the steps. So this is now starting to lock in again the level of the pool, and again you can just see how much water, how much backfill gets washed in and underneath each one of the 3 steps on this pool to make sure that A, it's not drumming underfoot, and B, the level of the pool in that corner is going to stay exactly where you want it without it shifting around over a bit of time. The pool should not settle once you're filling up that second stage. This is a great shot. It just shows how important it is that that meter on the end of your water rod is firm, stiff, solid, however you want to call it, that you can actually push all the way down to the bottom part of both the deep end and the shallow end of the pool. You can see here that just a garden hose is just not going to cut it. You're just not going to be able to push that water right down to the bottom, and it's just not going to push out at the pressure that you need the water coming out at to get the backfill washed in and around. How much pressure, how much water pressure do you need? What this shot here just gives you an idea of just how much water is coming out of that submersible pump compared to, say, what your garden hose is going to be throwing out. So this is called a pencil compactor or a petrol-driven vibrator, and you can again hire it when you're picking up any other gear at your local hire shop. So these are used to, well, what many installers will say, lock in the pool. So what are they using it for? Once you've washed the backfill in and around and underneath the steps, then this vibrates the backfill all the way up and under. So it's just getting that next level of compaction. That's why they call them pencil compactions, in the areas where you need to do this, which is your steps and your swim out ledges or underneath benches. Note that you don't use this vibrator, the pencil compactor, on the other parts of your pool, mainly the pool walls. It can overcompact the backfill and then put a bow in the wall. Visually, it's not going to look good. It's not great for your pool shells structurally long term either. So only use the compactor in the corners or under benches as touched on. So while we watch this real time, then process from here is fill the pool up 300 ml at a time. So in this instance, it'll be up at 600 ml in depth. Push the backfill in and around the pool up to the water line, and then use your water rod all the way around the pool to wash the backfill in, making sure that it's getting thoroughly wet so it goes off and it sets in place. You're continually checking also the amount of water that's around your pool using the standpipe. And then following that stage, you fill the pool up another 300 mils. And backfill up to that level, and then you get up to the level where pretty much fully backfilled in and around the pool, and you're getting ready for the bond beam if you live in a state, pretty much everywhere in Australia except for WA, where you need a concrete bond beam that goes in and around the pool. That's a topic for another discussion or another day. And most important part, and a couple of key takeaways, is after that first 300 ml of water's in the pool, that's where you take your time to get the pool level. After that, the level of the pool shouldn't change, and make sure that you're keeping an eye on the walls of your pool so you're not bowing them out because you're pushing too much backfill around them, or the pool walls bowing in a little bit because of the weight of the water is pushing the pool wall in towards where the backfill is, and you haven't quite got enough backfill, so you just get a little bit more backfill down into that part to get the walls straight. So with the vibrator, how do you know when there's enough material underneath the steps or the swim out ledges? Installers say that you hear it the motor starts to bog down a little bit. It gets a little bit tighter, a bit harder to move that vibrator up and down. That's usually the indicator that you've got enough backfill in place in and around the pool. So that's pretty much the main things when you're backfilling the pool to be mindful of. Really important that your pool's going to be in place for the next 25, 30 years. You really don't want to rush this. Take your time with it. Check the levels the next morning. You definitely want to fill the pool up and then let it settle overnight or sit overnight, and then check your levels again the next morning just to make sure that the pool hasn't shifted and you need to do a little bit more work before carrying on. If you really like what you've seen, then please feel free to subscribe to our channel. We'd love that. If you've got any ideas or suggestions on videos that you'd love us to make, please let us know as we're continually building our library. Good luck with the installation. I hope this video has helped shed a little bit of light on some of the mysteries of backfilling a pool. All the best with the installation, and thanks so much for watching.